Can I ask Joan, where you currently just roundabouts reside in Australia? Because I'm in Queensland and in a t-shirt. I don't know how you're going.
Oh, I'm cold. It's cold for me. I'm actually in Sydney, actually in Cremorne
Ah,
Point, but I'm in a really beautiful old deco building that faces south. So I have lots of big high windows, but it's cold. There's no central heating,
oh
so
no.
I have a hot water bottle behind me right now.
Because I'm a Victorian boy and I miss the electric blanket. You don't need those in Queensland, but those electric blankets my mum used to turn on and warm up.
Do you know, I've never used one. Actually, I did for a while, but I actually like just a really nice, thick, fluffy doona, and that.
Mm. Yeah, there's no need for that up in Queensland. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Ben's Book Club. We'll just let everyone sort of enter. It sort of takes a few seconds for everyone to enter. But very welcome. Hello, Judy. I can see you. You're very familiar with the Zoom stuff there, Judy. And Jane, hello. Yeah. So normally what we do with Ben's Book Club is we get people to type where they're from in the chat. We love to see from all over the world. We've had a lot of different people, but especially in Australia. I think one of the coolest things about this particular book club, and because it's online, is we get to go all across Australia into a few smaller communities sometimes that perhaps a lot of authors might not visit on book tours and things. So it's pretty cool. We get to go to all these different places. Hello, Vicky. I don't know whether you can see the chat at all, Jane. There's a lot of
Yeah,
people.
I can.
This is
Absolutely.
awesome.
Yeah, it's so much fun. I think it's great.
Isn't
It's
it cool? Look, Erin's from Hobart. Okay, so our talk about cold, Erin probably just rolled your eyes at us a little bit, I
yeah.
bet.
The thing is,
Arnold Quinn.
I grew up in New York where we have very cold winters, but I've been here in Australia for more than 35 years, so my blood has got very thin. So I get very cold very easily now.
You're acclimated. Do you ever go back to New York and feel the sting of winter over there?
You know, every time I've gone back, it's usually in the warmer weather there, so I leave the cold here to go there.
Got a
Um,
few from Melbourne, a few from Tassie. Oh, this is awesome. Actually, this is one of the biggest turnouts we've had, Joan. I have to tell you. We've obviously got a very popular book here. Gemma
oh,
from Springfield, Queensland. A few from Melbourne. Represent Melbourne from Berwick in Melbourne. Well, not originally, but I lived there for a long time. South Morang, Sunshine Coast. That's near to where I live right now. Oh, Sue said a warm dog helps. Are you cuddling your dog at the moment, Sue? That's a great idea. Do you have any pets, Joan?
well, my dog is right behind me over there, asleep on the
Oh, that's adorable.
couch.
Ah,
And she was actually the sort of inspiration for the dog Bob in the book Echo Lake. So I I have as my ex-husband pointed out, I see a lot of you in Rose, and I was like, oh, you spotted that, did you? Which
well, we're
was
gonna. I definitely want to pick your brain on, yeah, how autobiographical Rose is for sure. That's going to be a big topic of conversation. We can all look at this. Look in the chat. People are loving Bob, and people are already sending through a lot of their thoughts. This is awesome, guys. And yeah, so with Ben's Book Club, this is just a real opportunity for everybody around Australia to come in and to have a chat with an author. And today we've got Joan Sauers here, and we're going to be chatting about her awesome book, Echo Lake. But if you have questions at all throughout the course of time, or if you have any comments that you'd like to make, just pop them in the chat. We'll get to as many as we can. I'd like to render myself useless eventually with writing questions and have them written by my chat is my main aim. But let's introduce Joan. So Joan is born in New York, and you're pretty well established, Joan. You've got a lot of credits. You're a screenwriter, a producer, and an author, and you've worked in London, Los Angeles, and New York before settling in Australia, the best place on the planet. She has lectured in screenwriting in Sydney, London, Paris, Berlin, and Casablanca. You're the coolest person I've ever talked to. I tell you what, she has had 14 books published in Australia, the US, India, and Japan, and you've been a editor on films including The Babadook and TV shows Rake and The Principal. and you're working on another TV series at the moment, which I'd love to chat with you or about that with you a little later on. Um, and a sci-fi romance created by her daughter, a Southern Highlands mystery, which is after this one, correct? Um,
Yep.
talk about that. Jeez. All right. Well, maybe you'd be here for what do you reckon, Joan? About 9 hours at this rate. Um,
See, this is the advantage of being as old as I am. Your CV looks really impressive because you've just had so many years on the planet to do so much stuff.
it's really cool life though that you've led. Like I was, I'm turning 40 next year, and I've been really considering, I feel like I'm entering my prime years. I'm entering this time where I'm going to be building legacy, and I've got, I feel mature. I've got a few things going on, but I don't know whether my resume is going to sound as adventurous as yours. How have you lived such an adventurous life?
It's funny, I don't think I take it for granted. But I always, even as a kid, I wanted to do the things that I have done. I wanted to travel. I wanted to live in another country. I wanted to teach. I wanted to be a mother. I wanted to make movies. I wanted to write books. And it's funny because I've never really thought of myself as an ambitious person, but I
Mm.
think I realized recently why I managed to get through a lot of those things and do them. And I think it's because I'm the middle child of five.
Okay.
And
Yep.
and because of that, I'm a big believer in birth order and sibling relationships fueling what you become as a person.
Hmm.
And I think I just became really competitive, and I became very determined um, to get what I want. It's like I remember my sister, who was the eldest. We would get, like, after dinner, a family size bag of M&Ms
Mm.
as kids, and we would sit around a circle and she would count them out, giving one to each of the five of us. And I
Hmm.
remember guarding mine in the middle, terrified someone was going to take one away. And they tried, but I would always
Oh,
get them back. And I think that kind of, as a really little kid, I learned to go after what I wanted and to really take, really carpe diem, I guess. Really
yeah.
seize the day, because those are everything that you listed are kind of things I wanted from a young age. And I just thought, well, I'm going to go out and get them.
That's really cool. And I think about that story too because it's kind of easy to go in the opposite direction too, though, isn't it? That on one hand, you learnt how to fight for the things that you really want, right? But there's also, I think, a lot of young people might go in the opposite direction, just become very afraid, And if you'd gone in that direction, I mean, can you talk a little bit about living life as this artist? You're an artist. You've done so many different things that you've created art, right? Like it's a vulnerable thing. It's a scary thing. You constantly have to be in front of people and say, "Here I am in all my rawness." What's that like, living a life like that?
It's scary. It is scary. And it isn't, I don't have a lot of stability. I mean, I think from the time I was, left school, I basically, there was 1 year or maybe a couple years that I actually had a job. The rest of the time I've just been freelancing. So
One.
never really knowing where the next income was coming from. And all those things you listed, like the books and the teaching gigs and the lecturing gigs all around the world, they were things that came sort of dotted in with some long, very lean periods. So
Hmm.
I'm not rich. I'm not, I rent my little 1 bedroom apartment, but I'm really happy.
Yeah, I would
And
say I'd say you're rich in
yeah,
life, like you've lived a
I'm
life.
rich in life, but I certainly, I'm not wealthy, and I'm happier than a lot of people I know who do have a lot of money. And I feel like, it is uneasy. I mean, sometimes I think I would like to have a little stability,
Yeah.
but or a little more stability, but at the same time, I really wouldn't trade what I've been doing for
Yeah.
any. Also, I think the other reason I've done what I've done is I'm best suited to it. I think I'm really bad at jobs, at jobs.
Yeah.
I think I'm very good. the one time I worked in the last job I had, I worked for a year at Screen Australia, our national film funding agency,
Yeah.
which was great. And it was a good working environment. But just the idea of going into an office every day and dealing with lots of other people, I actually found that so stressful. I
Mm,
became addicted to sleeping pills. I was always tired. I was
uh,
always sick. And I think I just realized that I need to be working for myself and I like being in my own head. So while a lot of what I've done has to do with how determined I've been, it also just has to do with who I am and what I'm suited to and what I'm
yeah.
good at. And that takes a while, I guess, for people to figure out. And so, Ben, maybe you have another year or two to figure out, if there's other stuff you want to get into.
Yep, yeah, yep. One more year, and then I'm on my course. We've got a couple of questions here. I thought this one was good because I actually think I botched it earlier. But Alison Collins, thank you for asking this. How does Joan pronounce her own surname? I think I said Sawyers before, but I'm
It-
wondering.
which, which is fine. It's actually Sauers, but
Sauers. Okay.
I answer to Sawyers most of the time.
Yeah. Let's go for Sauers. Okay, so Alison Sauers, thank you for helping me with that. We've got a lot of great comments here. May said, loved the book right from the beginning, great characters, and did you ever live in the area?
Yes, in fact, the whole reason the way the book came together was because of the area, and it was funny because I've lived in Sydney most of the time I've been in Australia, but I moved to the Southern Highlands at the beginning of the pandemic,
Oh,
partly because both my daughter and I and her husband, we were all kind of, our jobs were on hold, careers were on hold. They're freelancers as well, and it was like, are we ever going to work again? So we thought, well, we'll rent somewhere that's cheaper. And his family lived in the Highlands, and I'd always wanted to live there. I'd loved visiting there. I love that kind of, British misty forests, the wintry vibes. And I love the kind of Gothic mystery of the
mhm.
place in a way, but beautiful little town. So we moved down there. And at the time I had been thinking of the detective mystery or the murder mystery that I wanted to write one day, but it wasn't quite coming together. And I didn't know why. I had sort of different elements, but I just wasn't feeling the juices flowing. And then when
Mhm.
we got to the Highlands, it was, I think, the first day I went to the dog park with Boo,
Mhm.
and it was foggy, just like in the book for Rose's first trip to the dog park. And there really was a guy playing bagpipes. And I thought, oh my God, this has so much atmosphere. And suddenly I imagined a kind of ghostly presence, and I imagined bodies being found in the forests, like Ivan Milat with Belanglo, and which is so nearby
Mhm.
as well. And I just thought, oh, this is the place. And then very quickly it all came together. And I wrote most of the book when I was still living down there.
Mhm. Yeah, I think you can really feel that authenticity in the area. I think you capture that really, really well. And, books can be very transportational. I don't think I've ever visited the Southern Highlands, but I felt like I had when I read your book.
Well, I have
Um,
friends who have said that after they read the book, they organized a long weekend to do an Echo Lake tour of the Southern Highlands,
cool.
and like bring their dog and go to the dog park and then go to Dirty Jane's, to the antique store, and look for the dusty maps. And because there were so many real locations that I used in the book. I had one friend though who said, I couldn't find the Irish pub, I really wanted to go and hear the girls from Galway. And I said, oh no, I made that part up.
No.
Everyone was, what, but the Burrowang pub where
Ah,
they have the auction, that's all real. That's absolutely like it is. So I think a lot of people are, what I love to read are what I call destination books. I love books where
mm,
I feel immersed in the location. So, and especially when it's real, like the Shetland series, and
yeah.
Cleve's. I love going to the Shetland Islands, or Vera Stanhope, going to Northumberland, or,
Mhm.
there are so many books that are so deeply entrenched in the locations where they're set. And for me, reading a book is partly, going to a new destination and going to a place I want to revisit again and again.
I love that too. I love finding out a new world, like a new world with new words and things like that, and the way people talk to each other is so specific. But I'm actually a big fan too of, and I think you've done that in this book really vividly with um, how Rose is a historian, and I really love process. Like I love watching people who are good at their jobs do cool stuff in their jobs. So I'm like, oh, that's what they do. I sort of see. So, can you talk a little bit about creating that specific aspect to Rose's character? Because I would love to dive into really unpick talking about her in great length because she's such a important new creation. You know what I mean?
It's funny because the idea of having her be a historian actually came fairly late in the
Oh,
process. I mean, I had outlined the story and everything was the same, except I think for a while I had her being a journalist who had left her life as a sort of
yeah.
writer for the Sydney Morning Herald or something before moving down to the Highlands. But there was something about it that just didn't quite, and as an investigative journalist, she sort of made sense to have her be like an amateur detective.
Yeah.
But there was something about it that I just wasn't wild about. And then I thought, and this is another reason I'm a writer, is I'm very lazy. And I don't necessarily want to do all the work it would take me to figure out how her life as a journalist would work in the Highlands. But so what I thought was, in the book where she's as a historical researcher, she has all these little assignments, including the first one where she has to research the children who came on the first fleet.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what that actually was from was research I did because I was writing a screenplay for a feature film about the children of the First Fleet. So
Wow.
I did that research, and all of the other bits of research that she does, including who wrote Waltzing Matilda, the Shackleton story, all of those were ill-fated screen projects of my own that I already did the research for. And I thought, I know, I'll have her be a historical research and she can talk about all the stories of mine that I never got to tell
That's
in
very smart. That's smart because then
screenplays.
you've already done the research. You've done the
I've
work.
already done the research,
Yeah.
and I was able to sort of cherry pick the bits of each story that I really loved. And then I thought, well, that's perfect if she's a freelance, online researcher, because that's something I relate to as someone who likes to work on my own, likes to work
Mm.
at home, loves to spend time in libraries. But I am naturally curious, and I'm a really good, like, I can get people to tell me their deepest, darkest secrets after knowing them for a few minutes. And I thought, well, if Rose, because she has that natural curiosity, but she's completely unthreatening, if she has that quality on top of being able to technically be good at research, then she really became well-rounded. But the other big aspect of her that I also share is that ability to pick up on the history of a place. And
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. Well, moving to this because I wanted to talk to you about this a little bit, but I'm very sorry if I've pronounced your name incorrectly, but it's either Aria or Aya. Has asked this question, and I was very curious. Is Rose's character based upon yourself or anyone else? And I guess you've just revealed a little bit, but how much of Rose is really Joan? If you had to take
it's
elements out.
it's funny. I mean, what I did was I used a lot of aspects of my life and my experience, but in one way, I think she's very different from me. In fact, I've said to people, I'm actually sort of part Rose, part Kim. So I've got kind of Kim's
I love that. Yeah.
pushiness and sort of lack of subtlety sometimes.
Uh-huh,
I
uh-huh.
I think in some ways Rose is she has more insecurity and vulnerability than I do, but but I have those things too. I think she wears them more on her sleeve. And I
Mm.
feel like maybe she's more like who I was 20 years ago. Um,
So you think she's more easily hurt, maybe? She's a bit more
yeah,
sensitive.
yeah. And I think part of that was a very calculated decision because this Echo Lake was always intended to be the first in a series of books. So what
Yeah.
I want to do is I want to have continuity for her character. So I want her to have a lot to learn and a lot, need to still grow a lot over the
Yeah.
course of several books, at
Hmm.
least, hopefully. So I didn't want her to be too sure of herself. And also, I just think generally characters are more interesting if they're full of self-doubt, which I so still am. But, her
Yeah.
especially, I think she's socially insecure and so there is a lot of me in her, but I think not so much her emotional temperament as just the things she loves. Like her bookshelves, the books on them, the movies she likes to watch, that's all me.
Yeah, right, right, right.
The music,
And
the music is all me, all of my favorite bits that she mentions.
but like you said, you sort of amplified her vulnerability, which, I think, I've got this Facebook group and everyone here is welcome to come and join the Ben's Book Club Facebook group where we sort of talk about different books every month. We're sort of a bit of a book club, Ben's Book Club. Um, but most common refrain with this book is that a lot of people found it very, very relatable. And so you, as the novelist, you sound like you're very smart and calculated in how you write a character to get them to be relatable. So I guess my question is, what sort of elements went into Rose to do that beyond perhaps just making her vulnerable and a little bit of self-doubt? Is there anything else you included to make her seem really authentically real?
I think it's funny because when I wrote this book, what I wanted to write was a book that I would like to read.
I love that.
It wasn't that I was calculated in making her relatable to readerships and lots of people. I wanted her to be someone that I liked to spend time with. And
Yeah.
I thought, well, if I like her, maybe other people will like her. And I thought, so I think that was just a big part of it. I wanted her to be someone who was, as Kim points out, you're not really a doormat, you're more of a bath mat, like you're functional, but you have a mind of your own. So I wanted her to be someone who was somewhat full of insecurities, but at the same time had a very clear character of her own,
Yeah.
had very clear and strong feelings about what she loved and what she didn't love,
Yeah.
and what she wanted to do. So in her own way, even though she can be very unsure of herself, she's also, I think, very determined. Um,
Mm, I pay that.
and and again, I didn't sort of sit back and go, well, is that relatable? Are people gonna get into that? Are they gonna like it? Is that a turn on or a turn off? It wasn't like that. It was just what I liked, what
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
related to.
That's cool. I like that. Do you think, because this is my very first, and it's been pegged as a cozy mystery, do you think that element of the cozy, I mean, a part of it is all the, eating of all those dessert treats, bakery treats, right? But it's also to do with the characters. Like you just feel, when you're reading your book, you feel comforted. At least I did. Like it felt very welcoming. Yeah. Do you think that's part of that tag, the cozy mystery?
Yeah, and in fact, it's funny because that was again something that I did because I like to read. I love mysteries
Hmm.
and I read all kinds. But I think there has been a tendency for a lot of murder mysteries to go really dark and really grim and really violent.
Yeah,
And
that's
I
what I
think,
like. Normally, that's what I normally like.
yeah, which is fine. And there's a place for that. But I love mysteries that are as much a sort of clue puzzle mystery as they
Yeah.
are a story full of violence and blood and guts. And it's funny because my favorite books to read are often either sort of cozy English mysteries,
Mhm.
murder mysteries, a la Shetland or the
Yes.
Risk Galloway series, which I love, but also the Alexander McCall Smith books. So all the Scotland Street books and Number One Ladies Detective Agency. And he does a wonderful thing in his books, particularly with the Scotland Street series. They're sort of about nothing, but what they are about is really interesting, usually very decent people who are also flawed, being really decent to each other, but they always find ways of crossing each other somehow and then having to make up for it. And I just always love reading his characters for the way they relate to each other. And what I realized when I wanted to write this book was that you can have a murder mystery within a society, a group of people that actually are quite kind to each other and
Yeah, it's so
thoughtful.
nice.
And so I wanted to create characters, a sort of, an array of characters who were not only real and had their own mysteries and their own dark secrets, but who mostly were full of grace and treated each other well. And so,
Mm.
the friendships and the sibling relationship, again, while problematic, it's ultimately, about people who care about each other and want to treat each other well. And I think that can be as engaging as a
Yeah.
high-speed, bloody, violent chase,
Mhm.
at least for
Yeah,
me.
it's well, I think a lot of the time I read those sort of gritty books and those really dark books because I feel like it's more somehow more honestly reflective of the world, sadly. But man, it was nice to read your book and have a bit of hope. You know what I mean? Like it's so nice to read hopeful books. It's nice. And it certainly was a relief. And maybe I should read more of them, I think.
It's interesting because you use the word realism. And the thing is, I know
Mm,
the world is really, truly full of hideous, horrible, dark people. But in my experience, in my real world, most people are really lovely.
yes, exactly.
Partly,
Exactly.
I'm just lucky. But also, it's to do with most people in their lives don't come across psychopathic murderers and
Right.
they aren't beaten every day. Unfortunately, and sadly, a lot of people are. But I think it is a more common experience for people who go to libraries and read books and have
Mhm.
friends and go to book clubs. It's more common for them to be in a society of people where they care about each other and they look after
Yeah.
each other. And there's no reason that a murder can't be dropped within the middle of that society and create problems. And I
Oh,
love
yeah.
the idea that Rose starts to suspect her friends of
Yes, that's interesting.
of
Yeah.
murder, because I think that's where you can have fun with the idea that some of these people may not be as innocent as they
As they
seem.
seem. That's so cool. Um, Yeah, I often think because I'm a high school teacher as well, and like you'll have a class of 28 kids, and there'll be one who, whatever circumstances is going on, might misbehave consistently and, you know, not nice student in the classroom, doesn't behave the way you'd like. But then there's 27 kids who are the ones who are perfect and loving and kind and will help you and, are there to learn. But you won't think about the 27, you'll think about the one. And that's a sad thing. I've got to maybe address the way I focus on the negative sometimes, I think. Um, Joan, I have to go to the chat. The chat is blowing up. This is
I
not
know.
happened before.
I'm watching. I'm reading the
Me
comments.
too. Me
I'm
too.
thinking about. Oh, I wish I want to talk about that. I want to talk about
Yeah,
that.
no, let's go through them because I think there's some awesome ones. So first of all, let's just Gemma said along. Sorry, we're going to go through the chat right now, guys. So sorry we haven't got to it yet. So Gemma has asked about if there's any potential because she's chosen the book or the book was chosen for her book club. But are there any sort of like resources for a book club? Is there something on sorry, it's Ellen and Unwin, isn't it? Is it Ellen and Unwin website? Is there any book club questions? Or maybe she should just be writing down what we're talking about here.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea. I don't know that. I don't think Alan and Unwin has, organized any sort of resource for book club questions. I know I know there is a lot of the bookstagrammers on Instagram, which is such a big thing that I didn't even know about until I wrote this book. There's a lot of chat in their comments.
Ah, okay, that could be cool.
A lot of the top bookstagrammers in the country who have picked up on Echo Lake, and they chat to each other about different things in the story. And I've gotten involved with like answering questions and things. So there might be things in there for a book club. But I think, I'm just trying to think of what other resources. I've done a fair amount of interviews and things, but hopefully it's something that will get people talking in a book club without necessarily needing that much guidance. Because I think whenever I've been with a group of people talking about this book club, everyone has an opinion about the different characters. And
That's
I've
a
been
big one too, right? Like, yeah, who you like and who you didn't perhaps like
yeah,
as
and
much.
who do you suspect? And what's really funny is a lot of people, if not most people, didn't pick the killer until the very end. But one of my best friends, he was the only person I know. I'm careful with my language because I don't want to spoil it for people who haven't read it yet.
Well, I think most people will have read it, but yes, we can try our
But
best to avoid spoilers. That's fine. Yep.
but my a good friend of mine, I was amazed. He picked it after like the first 10 pages. And it's so funny because I guess when you think about it, it makes sense. He's also a writer, and he was the guy who wrote the screenplay adaptation of The Dry, Jane Harper's book.
Wow.
So
Okay. Yep. That's a
he
big
kind
one.
of he kind of knows the craft, and
You
was
saw
like,
what you were doing.
well, actually, what was really funny was he said to me, he said, yeah, I got it because I realized that what you were doing was a kind of Jane Austen Pride and Prejudice thing. And Rose was like Lizzie, and Blackmore was like Darcy, and then this other character was William.
Ah,
And I said, that wasn't at all what I had in mind, but I'm going to claim it from now on.
yeah. Yeah, don't put him in the story from now on. You meant that from the start, right? We'll just exclude his revelation there.
Exactly. Exactly.
Um, so Jennifer has asked, are the characters people you know or have met? So we talked about Rose, but is anyone else in here based on anyone that you know?
Yes, the probably the one more so than Rose, who is exactly someone I know, is George. In fact, I'm going down to visit him on the weekend, and he actually just had his 90th birthday.
Wow. Can I
Um,
can I tell you very quickly on that note that that's who my mum suspected?
oh, well, there was one point I had made such a good case of him being the murderer.
Yeah.
Again, I don't want to spoil it, but yeah, I was like, I think George is the murderer. And in fact, there were times as I was writing the book where I thought for a while of changing who the killer was. But in
Ooh,
the end, I came back to my original idea for who it
okay.
would be.
That's
But
probably right.
George is definitely my good friend Michael, and who was an English retired publisher. He used to run Penguin back in like the 60s and 70s,
Wow.
and I met him at the dog park when our dogs, and his dog is exactly like Cordelia. Her
That's
name
so cool.
is Juno, but I met him at the dog park. We met through our dogs and became instant friends, and just lend each other books. Actually, he lends me books because he has all the nice hardcovers.
That's okay. So he's really mirrored on this person named Michael.
Yes.
That's cool.
Absolutely. The only difference is because when I had told him that I based this very big character in the book on him, and he was very flattered. But then he read the book and he said, "I wish I had a house as nice as he has." He says a little more modest.
Wish fulfillment. Wish fulfillment.
Exactly.
Um, so a lot of people, I mean, maybe later on we can somehow send you all these lovely comments, Jane, because it's lovely, right, to get all this wonderful feedback. I'm just
I
trying to go through and get to just the questions. Sarah loved it, binged the book. I heard that a lot. A lot of people were just turning the pages. Few people also listened to the audiobook as well and really enjoyed that. Um,
That was
someone said, oh, so sorry, Aria, if I'm pronouncing your name wrong, I'm very sorry, but remember she was the one asking about basing it on you. She said it's because the black turtleneck reminds me of Rose, what you're wearing right now.
this is this is actually a very dark brown, but that is 100% me. My uniform is in winter a black turtleneck and blue jeans, and I'm afraid I often think it's because I did grow up Catholic and then lapsed or collapsed, but growing up in going to Catholic schools and wearing
Yeah.
a uniform my whole life, I think I just, again, I'm a bit lazy when it comes to dressing, and I don't really care that much. I'd rather just be comfortable and not think about it. So yeah, I have my uniform is Rose's uniform.
Wow. Okay, that's cool. I love having these opportunities with where the chat can say some things because they know so many different things that I wouldn't. I'm just one reader, right? Now this question's really cool, and I think you sort of alluded to this a little earlier. Bridget has asked, where did the ideas for the ghosts and the sort of supernatural aspect of the book, which
Yeah.
comes out in a few different spots, where did that in particular come from?
Well, that was the funniest thing because that wasn't ever initially part of the outline. When I outlined the story, it was all about, Rose and being a historian and moving to the Highlands and solving murders. And then as I was writing it, I really got into this idea of what Rose experiences in when she goes walking alone in the bush, and
Hmm.
how you can, I really believe you can sort of absorb, I don't know, things that have happened. And I remembered one time that when I was with my now ex-husband, but we were camping in Northern California, just outside of Yosemite National Park. And we found this absolutely beautiful campsite, this amazing clearing. I mean, it wasn't a designated campsite, it was just part of the wilderness.
Yeah.
And we got out of the truck, and usually we would set up our tent right away. And instead, we just wandered around, and it should have been perfect. But there was something weird about the place. And
Hmm.
then I started smelling something, but it was like I knew it wasn't a real smell. I knew it was like in my head, but it
Right,
smelled
right, yep.
horrible. And I was filled with this feeling of dread. And I thought, my husband is never going to buy this, but I didn't like it there. And I turned around and I started walking towards him and I said, I think we should leave. And he said, absolutely. And we both ran back to the truck. And I
Wow.
said, did you feel it too? He said, yeah, there was something wrong with that place. Anyway, years went by. I tried to find out sort of at the time, like, if there had been a dead animal there, whatever. Couldn't find out anything. And then many years later, I was reading a book, a novel actually, but it was set in the early 1800s in Northern California. Anyway, it told the true story of the massacre of a family of Native American
Oh, okay, yep.
women and children by fur trappers. And it was in that spot. It was in that exact clearing in that ravine off
That's,
that river.
that's
And
eerie.
I thought, I felt that. That was exactly what it felt like. A massacre had occurred there.
Yeah, so you're a big believer in sort of a spiritual dimension and different things affecting the way a room feels, right? Like that's something that
Yeah, just like, I mean, the echoes of the past. I
yeah.
mean, it's happened to me a few times. It happened to me in a church in England where it turned out a choir had died in a fire. And then it also happened when I was outside of Inverness in Scotland, and I was walking through a field, and it was a beautiful day, and I suddenly had stabbing pains in my stomach and was taken to the hospital, and they couldn't find anything wrong with me. And the doctor said, where were you walking exactly again? And I told him, and he said, oh, you were on the battlefield at Culloden. No wonder you were dying. We were feeling the swords of the English soldiers. Anyway, and I
Wow.
had no idea I was there, but it was, without having a really clear theory about how that all works and what it all means, I just know that there's more going on than meets the eye. And I feel like that somehow dramatic events have echoes, and good events as well as,
Is that where that comes from? The
that
echo?
is where that comes.
Ah, okay. That's clever. It's got multiple different meanings, that then.
And there's a quote at the beginning of the book from Margaret Atwood where she talks about, as all historians know, the past is a dark place filled with echoes or something like that. So
Mm.
I misquoted it, but anyway, yeah, I'm a big believer in that. So whether it's a spiritual quality or, as I think I said in the book, for Rose, she wonders sometimes whether she feels those things because she's a historian, or whether she became a historian because she feels those things.
That's such a good question. That's a good
Yeah.
question for book clubs, actually, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. Are we
Yes.
born
And
into, you know?
I'm fascinated to hear other people's stories like that, because sort of the more examples of people picking up on what happened in the past in a place that I hear, the more it reinforces that this stuff is real on some level, which I think is so interesting.
Well, I imagine there's a lot of people who've had similar experiences, but I don't know whether I've read it in a like a cozy mystery like this, where it's given a kind of reality and not just someone's superstition playing up and it's all nonsense in the end. Like it's actually sort of validated in the
Yeah.
novel, which was pretty cool. We've got a couple of questions here, and I actually want to ask this because I already know I've read a couple of interviews with you, so I think there's a good answer to this. But a few people want to ask why the camera roll. Why was that the first clue? Why hide it in the backyard? I think you've got a good story about this.
I do have a good story. When I actually first moved to Bundina, which is where I was before I lived in the Highlands, which is a little town on the south coast below Sydney, actually in the national park. It's got another sort of weird mystery vibe to it because it's just this tiny little town surrounded by bushland. Anyway, I just moved there and I was in the Manna Cafe, which is where Manna is in Bundina, and I met a woman who just sort of sat down with me at a table and we got chatting, and she said, "Oh, I hope you have a great time. When I first moved to Bundina, I was digging in my garden and I dug up a roll of film." And I said, "Oh my God, what was the deal?" And she said, "Well, someone had buried it there." And I said, "Did you have it developed?" And she said, "Of course I did." And I said, "My God, what was on it?" And she said, "It was pictures of my neighbors at a swingers party." And I laughed so hard. And I said, "Oh my God, may I please use this in a book?" Because aside from the fact that that's really funny, just the idea that you could be innocently planting something in your garden and find a roll of film. So the first question I thought is, would most people have it developed? And I don't know, but I sure would. And
I would,
Rose as a
I would
historian,
100% get it developed.
right? Okay.
Chime in. Would you get that developed? Would you be
Yeah,
that
would you
person?
get it developed? So I thought, well, I would. And then I thought, well, what would be on it? And I thought, pictures of a missing woman. And that's going to set Rose, that's just going to light her fire. That is just going to set her on a course to find out what happened to this woman and to find out who she was. So
Yeah.
I think that was a gift that landed in my lap, and I hope I used it wisely.
I think you did. Mandy in the chat has said you should have put the swingers party in the pics in the novel. I think it would have wrecked the rest of the plot, unfortunately, but man, that would have been hilarious.
It would have set a different tone.
I know, I'm sorry. I really want to know, like, what sort of pics were they? They must have been pretty raunchy to be buried, right?
Well, but also, like, why would someone bury that? Like, why not, if you don't want it, you burn it or get rid of it, throw it away.
Right, yeah, so why
But it
bury
was like
it?
whoever buried it wanted someone to find it eventually.
That is strange.
But these people still lived in the town, like they had just moved out of that house. And anyway, and my friend said, like, over the next weeks and months, walking around town, she would recognize different people from the photographs. I know, mind blowing.
That's so funny, like this secret knowledge you have on these people, right?
Oh,
That's amazing.
exactly, exactly. I know.
Bridget has asked that in the next novel that the swingers party somehow features, please.
Yeah,
That's what.
I may have to go there. The thing is, I can't use the buried roll of film twice, but there. But the funny thing about the swingers party thing is, I think it is the sort of thing that you don't think happens in small towns that look quaint
Right.
and conservative and all that, but they probably do more so than in the city. I mean, I think this is another thing I love about that sort of small town setting, is this idea that there's George at a swingers
I
party.
know. That just made me laugh, man. You keep making me laugh.
But I think that I find that really appealing. This idea that on the surface, it's these quaint, quiet, scenic little country towns, but
Yeah.
they all have a dark underbelly. And every small town I've lived in has a dark side that I think, everywhere has a dark side, certainly big cities, but you expect it in a big city.
Mm.
Whereas a pretty little town filled with sandstone churches and antique stores doesn't necessarily suggest itself as a place where swingers and murderers and strange things are going on, but they go on everywhere.
It's always a bit, yeah, it's always a bit shocking to the core.
It's always more shocking in a small town.
I grew up in a small town called well, most people who attend regularly will know the town. I won't mention it because I'm about to say something pretty bad
Oh,
about it. But there was, my mum and dad still live there. I've got my grandma there, and it's a very small town in Victoria. And we were all shocked when there was a meth lab explosion in the town. Oh, like regular community church folk, like we don't know about the meth
that's
lab.
right. That's right.
Yeah, but it was it was definitely there. Um, a lot of people are saying that this is seeming very true, like the relatability of that. Can I ask this? So you heard this little tidbit from this person who you ran into, and you had all these different things, characters. Now you are a screenwriter, and you've talked a lot about all the different screenplays that you've written and you supervised on. I had a bunch of questions on the Babadook because, oh my gosh, what amazing film that film is. But why a book? Did it immediately go novel to you, or did you have you know what I mean? Like, if this is your normal practice.
Yeah, I mean, I've always wanted to write a murder mystery.
Mm,
Um, and the thing is, I've just been so busy with television, especially for so long, because at the moment I've just delivered the final drafts of I've written 2 episodes on a new ABC series that starts shooting next month. That's a spin-off from the movie Ladies in Black, and it's
okay.
be a TV series. So I've written those. And before that, I wrote on Wakefield, the TV series that was also an ABC series that was also a sort of a mystery, but a psychological mystery.
Yeah.
Uh, and I mean, I've always loved writing for the screen because I love movies and I love television. Again, I'm basically a lazy person who likes to read books, watch movies, and TV. So I thought I better learn how to make a living out of it.
Yeah.
Uh,
Sure.
or scrape a living out of it. But I think ultimately, writing for film and television is harder. Writing screenplays is really hard. The main difference being that when you're writing a screenplay, You can't write what the characters are thinking. You can't
Yeah.
get inside anyone's head. So
Yeah.
everything that you write on the page has to reveal character through action, behavior, or dialogue. And very rarely in real life do people say what they're really feeling and thinking. So
Mhm.
it's a constant sort of tap dance, and also it's hugely collaborative. So you can't have creative control. You're working with directors and producers and actors and the budget and set designers and broadcasters and streamers, and they've all got notes. And one of the things that I wanted to try in writing a novel was to
Yeah.
have total creative control
Mm.
over the whole world. And I can hear right now, if I wrote this as a TV show,
Yeah.
I can hear the first notes from the streamers saying, well, we love the murder mystery, but we don't like the ghost story. So
Yes.
cut that
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
Or we love the ghost story, but forget about the murder. And I wanted to just write my own book in my own voice and make all my own decisions. And that sounds really selfish, but I also think there's a
No.
artistic integrity to that where I just feel like it's probably the best. And it's certainly the thing that's closest to my heart that I
No.
wrote.
That's lovely.
And I saw one of the questions. I'm already well into writing the second book, and I plan for there to be several Southern Highlands mysteries with Rose getting into deep shit yet again.
I did notice as an author myself, I did notice the planting of the seed of the son Sam, and then I was like, well, that didn't quite pay off in this one just yet. I mean, it was lovely, but I'm like, oh, that's going to come back somehow, I bet.
He's a forensic archaeologist. We got to bring him back. He's
It's very
he's
smart.
he's back from the beginning of the second book.
Nice. Okay, I'm looking forward to that one. We're nearly out of time, if you can believe that. I've got another few questions and a few other things to talk about. So, just in the chat, everybody, I'm just pressing send on the Facebook group for Ben's Book Club. Towards the end of the chat today with Joan, I'll talk about our next month's book. But every month we read a new book on the Libby app all together, and then we come in and have a chat with the author. It's a really great community. As you can see, everyone's really supportive and lovely to chat with. So would love to have you back. So feel free to join there. I post updates. I love this question from Jason. Jason asks about, a lot of people have said this seems like it's a very visual feeling book. It felt like often like watching a film or TV series. So I guess my question would be, obviously if it's so close to your heart, you'd probably be the one to write it, but is there any design in there? And then Jason's question is, who would you love to play Rose?
I have answers to all these questions. First of all, I am not as dumb as I look. When I wrote the novel, I wrote it loosely in 8 sections for
Mhm.
an 8 1 hour first season of the Highlands Mysteries. So I definitely wrote it for television. Also, it's just the way my mind works.
Yeah.
So I wanted it to be really visual, but also really, involving all the senses. So, so people would feel like they could see it rolling before their eyes and taste the cinnamon buns and smell the gingerbread cooking, but also just feel the mud under her boots. And,
Mm.
it would be so easy for me to adapt this as a TV series, and I've already written up the pitch deck and the outlines for the 8 episodes, and events to happen in future seasons. So we're just sort of waiting to see how soon the second book might come along, because when you're selling a TV idea to broadcasters or excuse me, streamers, they
Yeah.
want to know if it's a returning series. So I want to
Yes.
make sure I have the second book in the pipeline.
That makes
But
sense.
yes, it's definitely. Oh, and who do I see as Rose? Justine Clark.
Justine Clark. I actually don't know that
Oh
actor.
my goodness. You would know her if you saw her. She's been in a million things. She was in, I think, Secret Life, but she's also been in a lot.
Oh, okay. Gemma knows her. Oh, play
Okay.
school. Jennifer says play school.
Yeah, she's a big play school person. And it's funny because I haven't even approached Justine, but a friend of mine who's a producer who works with her a lot has said she will get her the book and she thinks she'd be great.
Have you
Um,
seen everyone's reaction in the chat here?
sorry, no. Oh, good choice. Well, because I think she's lovable and she's warm. And I think as her older sister, I'd love to have, as Kim, I'd love to have Claudia Carvin.
That's great. Claudia, I know. That's wow. Okay. Yep.
Yeah.
Ah, yep.
And of
Dream.
course, as Detective Blackmore, Chris Hemsworth. Duh.
Of course. Why not shoot for the why not give opportunities to the small town folk who don't have as many
That's what
actors?
I'm thinking. Yeah, because I asked my friend Michael, who is really George, who he wanted to play him, and he said, of course, Ian McKellen. So I said, great, we'll get Ian.
That's actually brilliant casting though. That's a great call from Michael.
I know. So I think it's done and dusted, Ben. It's this show is smoking hot.
I look forward to it. But hey, everyone in the chat, one way that things like that get made is from a bunch of supportive people who clamor studios for it. So that we've read this book together, I think it needs to go underneath, every Christmas tree come Christmas time and spread the word so we can get this show made with Ian McKellen, Chris Hemsworth, and
Yeah,
what a cast, what a cast.
it'll work. I think it'll work. Absolutely.
Can I have a role? Can I have like a cameo? Can I be in can I have the cinnamon bun?
But Ben, I'm seeing you as Ray Mullen, as the guy.
Did you just do that to me? Did you really do that to me? That's amazing.
I did. I want to give you. I want to, expand your
All
horizons.
right, all right. I better practice.
Push yourself.
Yeah. Well, I mean, listen. Give me that script. I'll practice my line reading. I'll audition with everybody else just so we can make sure it's
All
above
right.
board. Yeah. I don't want
Just to be fair. Yeah.
to. Joan, it's been amazing to chat with you. We've just about out of time. It's been such a lovely time chatting with you.
Thank you.
I like to end with this question. Is there any question that you wanted me to ask that I haven't actually asked? Is there anything just burning within you to talk about with Echo Lake? Because I feel like we could keep going, but just
I mean, I feel like we could, but I also feel like we covered the big things.
We didn't even
And
talk about Ray. We didn't talk about the inciting incident at the start with the BMW.
no,
There's
we
so much
didn't, which
going
was
on.
which it happened to me exactly. And
Oh, really?
his name wasn't Ray Mullen, but he was driving a blue BMW.
And that interaction happened too, that aggressive kind of interaction.
Exactly, except in real life, the guy was even crazier. Like,
Wow.
yeah. But and my pipes were stuffed. In the end, I don't know whether it was him who did it, but it might have been.
There's a
We
lot of you in this. I'm just,
afraid so.
yeah.
I've always wanted to be really mysterious, and I'm afraid it's just all hanging out there.
I really enjoy your vulnerability and your openness. Thank you very much. Gordana, always great to have you here. Thank you for being a part of it. Thank you, everybody, for being a part of Ben's Book Club, and a special big thanks to Joan. That everyone has absolutely loved this book. It's been a real hit. And so,
Thanks. I'm
yes,
so pleased. I'm so pleased that it's just touched a chord with people, and I'm having so much fun writing the second one. And knowing people respond to this one, it gives me confidence to sort of keep doing it the way I'm doing it. So thank you.
yeah, and thank you. And Jane, thank you for help running the chat as well. I know you're always in there sort of helping everything. You can see all the people who just love this. So we'll have to have you back, Joan, when the next one comes out. We'll have you back.
Oh, I'd love to.
Yeah,
Love to be back.
that would be really cool. Now, just so everyone's aware, because I sort of announced what the next month book is during this chat, we are changing tack a little bit. We're reading something a little bit different. We've done one non-fiction book before, which was called Larimer, which was this little pub with a guy who went missing. It was a real true crime, I guess it would called. But the next one we're reading is called. Oh, look, my mum came to the chat. Hey, mum. Mum was messaging me during our chat, and she was angry she couldn't get on. So you made it. Thank you. She loved your book. She loved, yeah, she thought joy. Anyway, but the next book we're going to be looking at is called Growing Grapes Might Be Fun. And so it's a non-fiction book about a person who sort of ventures out into the country and makes a vineyard out of a junkyard. So it's going to be a moving, sort of funny, humorous memoir of people trying to, what does it say here, turn a sheep paddock into a vineyard. And they follow the centuries old tradition of family winemaking. So it's called Growing Grapes Might Be Fun. I'll announce it in the Facebook group. I'd love to have you back. But Joan, thank you again. Good luck with everything. And yeah, I'll call you about that audition, I
Yeah,
guess. Yeah, we'll be in touch. I'll have
brilliant.
my people call your people or something.
You might have to shave your head, but you'll be fine with that, won't you?
Yeah. Oh, anything. It's my dream role. Looking forward to it. All right.
Thank you again.
Thank you, Joan. And thanks everyone for being a part of Ben's Book Club. Thank you so much. All right.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.